Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Red Rising, Book 1, Chapters 14 through 19, and also Talking 13, which I didn't cover last time, but kind of did. These chapters are called Andromedus, The Testing, The Institute, The Draft, Classmates, and The Passage. In these chapters, we get to see what it's like to join this academy and the things you are made to do. There's something reassuring, at least, about knowing that the Golds are just as fucking brutal to one another as they are to everyone else. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Oh my god, I'm sorry, you guys. I just got distracted because Alex is in the chat saying, fun fact, because my dog has red fur, I played around with the name Darrow for him for a bit. That's delightful. But I'm sorry. Thank you very much to Ashley for commissioning this episode. Ashley is here in the chat. Hi, Ashley. Hi. All right, so like I said in the intro, I did talk about a lot of the big points in chapter 13, already in the previous episode, even though I didn't quite get there. But some of the main points I missed are about the way that Darrow is learning to behave, because his appearance has come quite a long way towards looking like a gold, but Mateo tells him, you look like a bronze. It's really funny, you guys. I just got off covering Jane the Virgin, was the previous episode, and her son's name is Mateo. So it's just a really weird thing that happens a lot, surprisingly often, is Spoil Me's that are next to each other will have similar character names, or they will both have the same kind of plot twist happening at the same time as a different thing. It happens so frequently. It's really bizarre. But anyway, I kept thinking about that and just being like, oh God. But yeah, this chapter starts off first with Darrow getting his hair follicles killed by some sort of cream. And this, it turns out, is just the latest fashion. I am saddened by this personally. I love body hair on a man. It's just, it can be a little bit too much depending. It can certainly go to a place that I'm I take it back. But mostly when a dude is smooth all over, I find it very off-putting. There's just something about it that I'm you look too slippery. It's like a dolphin or something. And when Darrow says I don't get why we're doing all of this extra stuff, I already look like a gold. He's like, you don't. You look like a bronze. You look like, basically what he almost says is, you look like a tacky slut and you're not going out like this. No. You've got to brush your fucking teeth, first of all, and we got to put some teeth whitening on there. We got to deal with your hands because you definitely need some manicuring. Your eyebrows are completely out of control, and you have too many nose hairs. Nose hairs, that's one thing. He says nose hair eradication, and I'm like, do they just not have them at all? That feels like it'd be dangerous. Nose hairs are there for a reason, but it may just be that they're too visible, perhaps. Maybe he's got to do something like that. And he calls him a bloody damn odd lark, and Mateo smacks him and says a gold would rather die than use that slithering mine slang. Gory damn or gory, and slag instead of squab. Every time you say bloody or bloody damn, I will smack not your gob, but your mouth. And if you say squab or gob, I will kick you in the scrotum, which I do know my way around. As I will do if you do not get rid of that horrible accent. You sound like you were born in a gory damn dumpster. So yeah, he has to go through all of this stuff. It's really giving Princess Diaries. And it's a pretty fun, like, this whole aspect of it is fun because it's easy to go through pain. It's another thing to have to, like, change your personal behaviors in a way that's, like, at the heart of who you are. The way you speak is about where you're from, how you were taught to talk, the way people around you spoke. And now getting rid of that, it's like the last vestiges of what he had, where he came from. And that's a really, really difficult thing. Like, anybody who has struggled with changing their language in our current, like, what's the word I want? Our current generation, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, we are all learning that certain language that we have been told was perfectly harmless is actually quite harmful. And so a lot of us have been attempting to adjust the way we speak about things. And it is so hard to keep in mind. It is remarkable how automatic a lot of my speech was. Thoughtless. Like, that's really what it comes down to, is I spoke thoughtlessly. And having to actually think before I speak can sometimes be like, oh, you're asking an awful lot of me. So this is the sort of thing that I like to think I would be quite good at, and maybe I would, but I know how tricky it is. So they tell him, like, you're going to be the son of so-and-so, and you're not going to, we're going to change your name. And they end up giving him what he wants and keeping Darrow, because he is just putting his foot down and is like, God damn it, you will make it work. And they do. And I love that, like, eventually when the news is delivered to him that they were able to successfully change his name, he's just like, good. And I think it's Dancer who's like, that's it? Do you know how hard that was? And no, he doesn't need to. Do you know what he's been through? Like, you kept him his name. It was hard. Well, so what? Do you want a tip? Like, what do you care about? Alex says, hair is fine. A shag rug may be a little much. Not just that, but you also have many of us who know and care for trans friends, and relearning their proper pronouns and not dead naming them is so tough. Yeah. Or just, like, adjusting. I've mentioned before that I can switch from he to her to she, from she to he, but switching into they, the singular they, is so tricky because I'm only used to using that during moments when I don't know specifically who I am talking about. So I'll say, I don't know what they did, but they screwed this up. It's somebody that is a vague shape in my mind, but not a specific person. And I'm not used to using singular they for when I'm speaking about an exact human being. And that one trips me up so bad. It's the kind of thing that I really feel like we need another pronoun for, other than they. I really wish we had something specific that was like, that felt less vague. But I understand that ultimately it's probably easier to use a pronoun that I'm at least familiar with than it would be to learn an entirely new pronoun. I don't know though. Maybe it wouldn't. I don't know. Anyway, so we get here a sequence that winds up coming up a lot later. And this was really, really fascinating to me. So I was talking with Rashawn a couple of days ago about so let me tell you what's going on in this scene first, is that he is talking to Mateo about how much fish he should eat on this plate. And at first he says all of it, and Mateo's like, no, were you even listening? And he finally says, pixies have no self-control. They take all the treats of power, but do piss all to merit them. They are born and they chase pleasure. And what is expected of a gold or a peerless scarred? Perfection. It means control, self-control. I am permitted to indulge in vices so long as I never permit them to usurp control. If there is a key to understanding aureates, it is found in understanding control in all its forms. Eat the fish, leave 20% to indicate its deliciousness did not overpower my resolve or make a slave of my taste buds. And this is fascinating because Rashawn our conversation stemmed. This is so embarrassing. I'm just going to tell you guys. I got in a real fucking fight with some very defensive women in the comment section of a post about a roast turkey recipe from Smitten Kitchen. And the reason I got in this argument was because the recipe called for 1 tablespoon of chili paste for an entire turkey. And it even had all of these like sliced onions under the turkey, but in the instructions it specifically said, don't worry about seasoning. The drippings from the turkey will season the onions, which already 1 tablespoon of chili paste for a whole turkey does not feel adequate at all to me. But then you find out that that seasoning is also meant to carry the sliced onions. You're not even separately seasoning those. And I started to get very angry because I had recently read an article saying, oh, we tried the best versions of pumpkin bread, the like top 5 most trafficked recipes on the internet, and picked our favorite. Smitten Kitchen won. And I went to make it and found out that they had 3/4 of a teaspoon of cinnamon, a half teaspoon of cloves and ginger, or no, a half teaspoon of ginger and nutmeg, and literally it said 2 pinches of cloves. It's a pumpkin bread recipe. Like, the point of it is the spice. And reading this turkey recipe, I suddenly realized y'all just underseason things on this website. Like, that is really not enough, not even close. And people started to come into the comments arguing about how I was wrong about the seasoning because you're supposed to brine the turkey in salt the day before, so I must not have read the recipe. Salt doesn't count as a seasoning, first of all. I know that, like, it's technically a seasoning, but let's all be very, very real. It's a very specific thing, and seasoning covers a wide array of other flavors. So I'm in this argument, and I'm talking about it with Rashawn, and then it started me talking about how, in general, with white people specifically, there always tends to be this weird restraint around spices, around colors, around the cut of clothing. And this came up because I have been doing resin work and I'm in a lot of different groups for it. And there are so many women who will share, like, people will comment thousands of comments on something that's really brightly colored with a ton of glitter in it that's really beautiful, and people will be like, oh, this is so great, I love it, and they get tons of accolades. And then those same people will post their own extremely anemic resin work and be like, I just don't get, it just isn't, I don't really like it, and I don't know what I did wrong. And I find it so strange because it's so obvious to me. You didn't take it far enough. You have all the elements that this other person whose work you love has, and you just didn't use enough. Instead of the 4 tablespoons of glitter and the full teaspoon of green ink they used, you used a single squirt of green ink and a spattering of gold glitter. And so, of course, it doesn't really look like anything because you didn't make a choice. You were timid about it. And so your end product winds up being kind of feeble. And this led to us talking about how clothing I buy. I go into the reviews to see how it fits. And the clothing I buy, the reviews are chock full of Black women. It's always like mostly Black women in the reviews. And anytime that I find a piece of clothing that I'm sort of iffy on, and I go into the comments to see how it fits, and it's mostly white women, I often end up not getting that piece of clothing. And it's not because I see white women and I'm like, ew, no. It's that there is a correlation between me ultimately feeling like this piece isn't really for me and lots of white women loving it. So it was the conversation that Rashawn and I had was about the fact that there is something in whiteness and the culture of whiteness that always tamps down the heights that things can reach in a way that is meant to be seen as classy and somehow elite, but to me is simply painting over the joy. And, you know, like, for example, a lot of modernism and the signal of like, oh, I have money, is a house that's all white furniture, big glass windows, very little knickknacks, you know, very few items in the house altogether. And this is how I can express to you that I am a person of means, is that my home is like an IKEA, like stripped of personality, in my opinion. Modern farmhouse, very similar thing. Lots of beige, white, gray, and very little color and very little like genuine original personality. And I'm thinking, reading this about control and not letting things get the best of you, that this might be the heart of the matter. That like white culture is about control. And he uses the word later on in these chapters, decadence, as like, once you start sliding into decadence, it's all over. Then you start to become a slave to these things, and you're falling into hedonism, and that's just the beginning of the end. And I'm thinking maybe that's part of the like feeling of restraint to the point of like constrained, where people seem to not be able to see that I just need to take it one step further. I have this with my fashion a lot. I wear clothing that a lot of people consider sort of daring, and it's really not. I just choose bright colors, or I wear interesting like patterned fishnets, and I will get people being like, I could never pull that off. But you could. You absolutely could. And I find it genuinely upsetting when people seem to feel like they're not allowed to just try a thing. Who cares if you put on patterned fishnets and people are just like, you don't usually wear those. That's going to make you take them off and never wear them again? Really? Like, it just seems like people are very afraid of allowing themselves to have passion and enjoy things in a way that is unrestrained and just has like abandon to it. Do you know what I mean? So I'm sorry, you guys. Ashley, I got a Great British Bake Off cookbook for Christmas last year, and it horrifies me that not a single recipe in that book calls for salt. I just don't understand it, especially because it calls for unsalted butter. Like, do you just not want your end product to taste like anything? Salt is what makes flavors pop. Ashley, I don't know if you came to the seasoning episode of Unsober last weekend, but I kind of started screaming about this very thing. So many people are weird about adding salt to sweet baked goods, and it's fucking annoying. I actually had a teacher at culinary school tell me when I asked where the salt was in a recipe, you don't need it, it's a sweet recipe. And I just stared at her in total incomprehension. And I was at that moment thinking, maybe I don't need this school. Like, it was a moment of real evaluating what I'm doing here. It's really weird. For anybody out there, the reason that Nestle Toll House chocolate chip cookie recipe is so famous, it's almost identical to a lot of other cookie recipes. But guess what? It has a full teaspoon of salt in the recipe, and many, many of them only go for a half teaspoon. Let me tell you, almost any baked good, if you double the salt, it will only improve it. If you double the amount of vanilla and the salt, forget it. Everybody will want to know what you did. I have this, it never, ever in my life has failed me to double the salt and the vanilla in a recipe. It just fucking never, ever failed me. And if it comes with spices, bump every spice up 50%. If it's a teaspoon of cinnamon, do a teaspoon and a half. If it's a half a teaspoon of cloves, do a full teaspoon. Just go for it. Or no, 3/4 teaspoon, I guess, for cloves. But you know what I'm saying. Anyway, all this to say, this control, I think, is ultimately what I'm seeing play out in a weird way, where there are people who do want more than what they've been taught to want. They want more flavor, they want more color, they want more everything. But they have a fear surrounding that it's like, where is this coming from? And it's coming from the culture of anyone who goes for these more flavors, more colors, more exciting cuts of clothing being looked down on. That is seen as low class. And so these people don't want to do anything that would tap them as being a member of a group that doesn't deserve as much respect as the group they're currently in. And so they don't want to step outside of that. And I find that so saddening, because life is too fucking short to not wear the clothes that you want or eat the food that you want. It's just not worth it. To make who happy? These other assholes who probably don't give a shit about you to begin with? Like, if anybody is willing to write you off because you wore something, they're not your friend. And you've just done yourself a big favor. Anyway, this was just fascinating to me. And also it makes a lot of sense, like in the context of fat phobia as well, is that people look down on fat people and have this like fear around becoming like them. And I don't even think it's about, I don't like the way you look, although that's certainly a huge part of it, as much as I think something about you as a person because of how you look. And I don't want anybody thinking that about me. And that what I'm thinking is, you have no discipline. You have no self-control. You are lazy. I think that and believe that in my gut about you. And I couldn't bear for anybody to think those things about me. And so it's like, I think this is really the control issue is like, has explained a huge section of white culture to me that I never really stopped and thought about in that way. And I really, really appreciated this. Like, it just felt like I got clocked between the eyes and was suddenly like seeing everything in a different way, you know? So anyway, we go into chapter 14 where he's learning how to dance. And there's a weird moment here where Mateo is like, what the fuck? Are you sure that you're a red? And he's like angry. And it's really funny because later on, there are some people that come at Darrow from the other direction, from the Golds. And they're like, are you sure? Because everybody is like, you're just doing this too well. And I feel like you're fucking with me. Like, this isn't real. You're cheating somehow. So yeah, Mateo thinks that like, maybe he is being punked and that this guy didn't used to be a red. And I'm really curious about, because like the way that Darrow talks about this dance is that he has seen it before and there's something nostalgic about it. I'm wondering if there's like some connection to Golds through his uncle somehow. I don't know, but or else it's just meant to be like aptitude that's ingrained, which would be fine, but a little bit less interesting. Oh, sorry. I just saw Alex in the chat saying, I'm just saying this for your health because I'm concerned for your health about fat phobia. And it's like, guys, I had a friend who was fat and she got ovarian cancer and lost a bunch of weight. And you can tell that people don't care about your health when you have literal cancer and they're all telling you how much better you look because you lost weight from a life-threatening illness. There was a woman I used to work with who lost all this weight because she had cancer. And when one of the dudes who worked there complimented her on her weight loss, she said, well, it's the chemo. It's from my cancer. And this guy literally said the words, well, cancer looks great on you. It's not about our health. It never was. So anyway, there's a moment here where Darrow's sort of being real fast and loose about like the mission itself, and his tone is striking Mateo the wrong way. And Mateo is like, do you fucking get what's happening here? If they catch you, they're going to torture you. And if they want the truth, they'll pump you full of chemicals and you will just tell them the truth. It's not about like that was the part that I found really frightening, is that it's not even, oh, they'll torture you to get information. They'll just torture you for the interest of it. They don't have to, but they will. If they want info, there's absolutely nothing you can do to keep yourself from giving that info up, because they have other ways of getting that. So anybody involved in this is going to get caught. And it says, they will kill your family with flesh peelers and stomp on the heads of your nieces and nephews. And it's enough to make him stop and kind of be like, I get it. I get it. I am Darrow, son of Dale, Lambda's helldiver of Lycos. I have never been anyone else, Mateo. If you are lying to me, I do not lie to low colors. What a line. So he gets woken up and he gets sent in to take his test. And this is really, really funny. So this reminded me, do you guys recall in, I think, the second Harry Potter book, or no, it is in the first book, because Harry's being sent to a different school and Dudley is given a straw boater hat and a stick that you can like whack people with. And in the text, it says something about how it encouraged them to whack each other when the teacher wasn't looking. This was supposed to be good preparation for later in life. That's what this feels like. So Darrow goes in to take his test, and there's this girl that is just irritating, bouncing her stylus on her fingers. And he like manages to take it off her before she notices it's happened. And so she's looking around and can't find it. And it's clear she's stolen it. And somebody did see him do it. So she never gets given another stylus, and she doesn't get to take the test. And as this is happening, I can't help but laugh, because Darrow just did this because she was irritating him. But I am thinking, this is the first test, right? She just starts whining. She doesn't stand up and demand her stylus back. She doesn't tell people to fucking turn their pockets out. She's not taking charge. She's just crying that this has been ruined for her. They don't want somebody like that. So her leaving, that's her failing the test right there. It has nothing to do with even taking it. And then Darrow, having done what he did, is an advantage for him. And I knew as soon as this happened, I was like, oh, they're going to really like this about him. Like, this is going to work for him. And the penny proctor looks at his data pad and rewinds a video from a nano camera. He looks at me and smiles. Such traits are apparently admirable. A golden razor blade of a girl disagrees and sneers "cutter" in my ear as she slices past me in the hall outside. Mateo told me not to speak to anyone because I am not yet ready to socialize, so I barely bite back a very red reply. Oh my god, you guys, I'm sorry. Pippin just farted, and it is the most hideous, suffocating fart that has ever happened. Hold on. I need to light a candle. This is so overpowering. What has happened inside him? Jesus Christ. This is like worrisome. Oh my god, okay. I'm sorry, you guys. That was so bad. Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay. But yeah, he's like thinking, she sees me as ruthless and cutthroat, but most of them would probably see it as an accolade. And then immediately somebody says, I think she paid you a compliment. So yes, he is very correct about that. And there is this guy, it turns out, is the son of like a pretty high up person on the chain. He is named Cassius. I'm lucky he gives me little time to speak because his brow wrinkles when I do. My accent is still not perfect. And when he like finds out his name, everybody reacts very much like, really? When they find out what Darrow's name is. But when he looks at where Darrow is allegedly from, he's basically like a country bumpkin. So they give him some slack because they figure, well, you know, he's not from around here. They do things weird out there. So this conversation is really tense to me. Like, I'm listening to it and I'm thinking he's doing a good job, but I kept waiting for him to really slip up, and he actually doesn't. He actually manages to keep from slipping up until way later. And when he does, he realizes how bad a mistake he made and manages to cover it really, really well. So Darrow is being pretty impressive to me. And yeah, this, like, there's a sense here of Cassius sort of trying to take him under his wing. It's like the fact that he took this stylist from this girl indicates that he has enough potential that maybe Cassius is going to want to network with somebody like this in the future. So like, I'm taking him under my wing because I have the power in the situation, but he could potentially be very useful. So we can help each other out, you know? And let's see. The dimensions of his face and information about our conversation are left behind. The address for the clubs he spoke of, the encyclopedic reference for Aegea and his family's information. Cassius Abalona, it reads, son of Praetor Tiberius Abalona, imperator of the Society's 6th Fleet, and perhaps the only man on Mars to rival Archgovernor Augustus in power. And I love this, that he keeps being like, I really thought these people were going to be scary, but I'm not as scared as I expected. Like, they're all just people. A lot of them aren't really that impressive. And they all just seem like fucking infants. Like, this is just not what I thought it would be. Which, I was simultaneously relieved to hear, and also, like, don't let that make you careless, though, dude. You know? Like, it's very easy when things seem like they're easier than you expect to get complacent and then fuck up because you just got a little too fucking cocky for yourself. So then we get all of the tests that he has put through. This is really giving, like, Cradle when the Akura clan takes Lyndon in and they test him. Those who don't know what I'm talking about, go read the Cradle series by Will White. You will enjoy it, I promise. But this is a series of really strenuous physical tests to see what he can tolerate, and he is clearly able to do more than average, and a lot of this is due to the fact that he was a hell diver and he is used to certain things and stronger because of his training and everything. So there's a girl that he runs into, and there had been a point earlier when Mateo's showing him how to horseback ride, and he wants the stallion. He gets given a pony, and he's not awesome even with the pony. And this girl is like, maybe you should stick to the cities, Pixie, and like rides off. And it's that girl that he accidentally walks in on changing, and he blushes, even though he knows that a gold shouldn't blush in response to nudity. But he notices that she also blushed. And I'm like, is this to suggest that maybe she's not really a gold? Or is it to suggest that she's kind of into him and would like it if he looked a little longer and maybe did something else? You know, like, just not sure how to take that. So there is this, like, you guys, this whole thing, his test results come back, and these people are coming in and demanding a lot of questions. They are giving him basically a lie detector test about whether he cheated. But because the control questions they're asking are also untrue, he is able to pass this no problem because he's not telling the truth a single second. So it works completely. And I was like, that's kind of amazing. And he keeps doing the whole, like, how dare you question me, because he's a gold now. And I find it kind of compelling that there's a point later on where he seems to genuinely be like, how dare he, and has to catch himself. And this is the stuff I'm here for, because I think it would be really easy to begin to believe the shit everybody says to you about how great you are. I have a tendency towards a huge ego in the first place, and you take me and make me look like a million times hotter than I used to look, and that's already a fucking problem. Then you have everybody bowing and scraping to me and all impressed with all of the things that I can do that other people can't do. And I'm sorry, it's just going to be the fucking game over for me. It's, you know what I'm saying? Like, so this, he winds up getting into the institute, which he wasn't sure that he was going to. It's like a pretty big deal that he managed it. Eventually, he finds out, like, he's got one of the highest scores, or maybe the highest. Like, he missed one question. Unheard of, you know? So he gets given the knife ring that Dancer had, and he is also given a locket. He can't take the flower with him, but he is able to take a petal off the flower, and he's given a locket that is activated by saying Eo's name, and the petal is put inside that. I'm really surprised he is allowed to keep his wedding ring, or whatever he calls it. I thought for sure that would be something that would be taken away from him, but evidently that's not as big a problem. So this, he's heading in and meets Julian, and this is awful, you guys. So Julian, it turns out, is the brother of Cassius, but it's like a really fun conversation because all Darrow can think throughout this exchange is how Julian should be a monster. And he's just a person. He is expecting a certain type with every person that he speaks to, and they're not all that way. I am very relieved to see this because it could be extremely easy to just make everybody who is of the upper class a complete piece of shit. And don't get me wrong, they're gonna have tendencies that are insufferable and born from extreme privilege, being spoiled, whatever. But the thing with Julian is you get the sense that if he hadn't been raised the way he was, that maybe he'd have been a pretty decent person. And I like this addition, and I don't like it later on when it turns out like he has to do what he has to do. But yeah, he has a nice like understanding of a sports team, and there's all these things that he's been educated on. And so he's able to do a little like back and forth joking about how, oh, you support them, I support Yorkton, like, you know, and it actually, again, felt really natural and impressive to me that he was able to pull this off. There's this other dude here, though. You sobs done beating each other off yet? Are we bothering you? Does two dogs humping bother me? Likely, yes, if they are noisy. And Julian gets all fucking like, how dare you? And eventually, he like challenges him to a duel, and this guy's like, are you really that offended? Okay, yeah, I'll do your fucking duel. Fuck you. Like, he does not care. And I am so curious about this kid. It's really fun because Darrow is watching this like, this is great. I'm really into this actually. But I really want this kid. Like, I don't think he's a red. I don't think that this is, some other dude who's like secret. I think that he has a bug up his ass about some other way he's been treated or screwed over or something. And that maybe he's like part of this thing because he's being made to be and is actually really smart, but just kind of like wants to shoot himself in the foot and get out of it. Like maybe if he has enough of an attitude, they'll just send him home and he won't have to go through with it. You know what I mean? I don't know. Yeah, sorry, Alex. I texted Owen real quick to like let Pippin out because I was like, I think that he might need to poop because that fart was so terrible. So I asked him to come get him. So his name is Severo, and he just like every time he gets a chance to say anything, he's just like, you fucker, you pisshead, you idiot. And I feel like there's real potential to like team up with this guy. We shall see. Maybe he's just as much of a, an asshole as he seems to be. There's a moment here. I have not been here before, but I have seen the columns, seen the destination of our voyage. Bitterness wells in me like bile rising from stomach to throat as I think of his face, think of his words, his eyes as they scan the crowd. I watched on the HC as the Archgovernor gave his speech time and again to the classes before my own. Soon I'll hear it from his lips myself. Soon I'll suffer the rage, feel the fire lick over my heart as I see him in person once again. And I was surprised to hear that he was so enraged at hearing this speech before. It just seemed like he had really bought into all of the propaganda, and I wouldn't have expected Darrow to be that rageful about the speeches. And this just kind of felt a little inconsistent to me. I don't know if that's just me or if it's like, I don't know, but it's just a sort of the sense of his complacency within the system that I had of it didn't seem to match with the energy of how he felt watching these speeches that he describes here. But it's not like that important. I just wanted to mention it. So this is this like the overall speech is about savagery, ascendance, decadence. The great rise because of savagery, rule in ascendance, and fall because of their own decadence. The Romans collapsed because their rulers forgot how their parents gained them an empire. And it is against the noble lie that we fight. There is another evil against which we war. It's more pernicious, subversive, slow. It is not wildfire, it is a cancer, and that cancer is decadence. And he talks about how men aren't created equal. They talk about that. It's fucking bullshit. We know it's bullshit. If we were all equal, then there would be no differences between all of us, but there are. And he says a red could no more command a starship than a green can serve as a doctor. And I'm like, yeah, but you created the reds and greens. Like saying men aren't created equal after you've performed hundreds of years of eugenics to breed new humans, that doesn't count. You know that, right? And secondly, it's a real indicator of his misunderstanding of the concept of equality. And this is, something a lot of people run into. Equality doesn't mean you can all do the same things, are all capable of the same things, are all the same. Equality simply means you are all as equally worthy of respect and the right to a healthy, happy life as anybody else. But he's out here being like, well, if you can't do multiplication as fast as I can do multiplication, then we aren't equals. You're sub. And I'm just like, that's not okay. You know, that's not what that meant, but go ahead, I guess. And you think you know pain. You think the society is an inevitable force of history. Many ruling classes have believed theirs to be the last, the pinnacle. They grew soft, fat. They forgot that calluses, wounds, scars, hardship preserve all those fine pleasure clubs you young boys love to frequent, and all those fine silks and diamonds and unicorns you girls ask for on birthdays. And I'm like, they have unicorns? I mean, I'm sure they do. Why wouldn't you? If you could make things, like, why wouldn't you make a unicorn? I want a unicorn, please. For me? Thank you. And he talks about sacrifice and gestures to his scars. We are the masters because we made it that way. The colors who mine this planet are harder than you, born with calluses, scars, and hatred. They are tough as nanosteel. Fortunately, they are also very stupid. For instance, this Persephone you have no doubt heard of is nothing more than a dim girl who thought singing a song was worth a hanging. And I was already imagining Darrow barely restraining his rage, but as soon as he said this, I was like, oh god, this guy is about to lose it. And yes, he's having to like chew on the inside of his cheek and it's bleeding because he is so angry. And he basically, I love this. Her willingness to suffer hardship gave her power. Martyrs are like bees. Their only power comes in death. How many of you would sacrifice yourself not to kill, but merely hurt your enemy? Not one of you, I'd wager. And that was an interesting thought. Just like, you're not sacrificing yourself to like take another person out. It's not an equal payoff, sacrifice to payoff. You would be giving way more to just do a little damage to somebody else. And unless you're like down to do that, you're not like one of us. And I was like, damn right I'm not. That is too much to ask. Sorry about it. So then we go to chapter 17, the draft. And it turns out that they're basically sorting them into houses. And they are houses like in Percy Jackson, where they're dedicated to like different gods. Sons of Linus and Lexus Andromedus, both of the House Apollo. Would you prefer to mark yourself as requesting House Apollo preferentiality? Goldbrow's first loyalty is to color, then family, then planet, then house. Most houses are dominated by one or two powerful families. On Mars, the family Augustus, the family Bellona, and the family Arcos influence all others. So he asks, how do you think you performed on the slang smarts test? And at first he's like, well, I think they speak for themselves. And he's like, I'm going to ask you again. And he says, I think I took a gory piss on your test, sir. You did. House Minerva for brains might be right for you. Perhaps Pluto for the deviousness and Apollo for the pride. Well, I have a test for you. Please complete it to the best of your ability. Interviews will commence when you have finished. And it is wild. This is like a video game, and he has to get a goblet that's on a hill, and there's all kinds of shit that gets in his way. I really love this. Every step there's a setback, an inconvenience, always unforeseen, something beyond the bounds of extrapolation. In the end, I reach the goblet, but only after killing an annoying wizard and cruelly enslaving the race of elves by means of said wizard's magic wand. I could have let the elves be, but they annoyed me. And I'm like, once again, I think you passed that with flying colors. You didn't give up, you kept going, and eventually killed and enslaved in order to get what you wanted. This is completely up their alley. I feel like that's just what they're looking for. And it's also another, like, personally, I can't play video games and be the mean guy. I always kind of want to because of the curiosity of where that would get me. I can't bear to do it. It's not even real and I can't do it. It's too mean. So another strange encounter comes when a beautiful man with coiled hair interviews me. A bow marks his collar, Apollo. He asks me how attractive I believe myself to be and is displeased when I undershoot his estimate. Still, I think he likes me because he asks me what I would like to be one day. An imperator of a fleet, I say. You could do great things with a fleet, but a lofty notion, perhaps too lofty for your family. Maybe if you had a benefactor of better familial origin, but unlikely. Best of luck. I sit alone for an hour or more till a sullen man comes to join me. And this dude is like, well, they give me mad dogs, killers, full of piss and napalm and vinegar. You smell full of shit. We of House Mars always burn out. Kids rule the Institute at first, then they find out napalm lasts about... He punches me in the face. If you punch me back, you'll be sent home, Pixie. I kick him in the shin. He limps away, laughing like a drunk Uncle Neril. And then he gets brought into this room that's like set up in a grid. There are 12 groups in the audience. Each group sits close together in float chairs. I see an archer, a lightning bolt, an owl, a wolf with 2 heads, an upside-down crown, and a trident, amongst others. I'm going to say the upside-down crown. Does that sound like it would be like Neptune? I feel like... I don't know. No, wait. Neptune's water. Pluto, right? I don't know. Let's see. These are the drafters, the men and women of highest prestige. The draft begins when a titan of a Genalt boy is chosen first to the House of the Lightning Bolt, House Jupiter. Then go more girls and boys of unnatural beauty and physical prowess. I can only guess they are geniuses as well. The 5th pick comes. Baby-faced interviewer with winged feet floats up to me on golden boots. Several of the drafters of House Mercury float along with him. They speak quietly amongst themselves before asking me questions. And eventually, one of them wants him, but the others disagree. Hope you're available next round, he says. Next goes a delicate girl with a mocking smile. We are arrayed in an odd way. With 10th pick, the proctor who struck me in the interviews floats my way. There's disagreement amongst the drafters. I have 2 ardent advocates. One as tall as Augustus, but her hair flows to her spine in 3 golden braids, and the second is broader, not very tall. He's old. Can tell by the scars and wrinkles on his thick hands. I know him immediately without seeing his face. Lorne Arcos, the Rage Knight, 3rd greatest man on Mars, who chose to serve the society by safeguarding the society's compact instead of reaching for crowns in politics. When he points to me, Fitchner grins. I am chosen 10th. 10th out of 1,000. So, they get put into tables where their names and their places are really significant. Like their names, where they're placed at the table is also marked with their score. Let's see. Yeah. A single bar floats to the right of my name. A -1 is to the left. The first to get 5 bars becomes primus of his house. Each bar is bounty for an act of merit. Apparently, my high score on the test was the first bit of merit. And this is when that girl that had called him a cutter shows up. She is unimpressed with him. and very annoyed that he's coming in like already at an advantage after what she thinks is cheating. Then he sees Cassius. He has a -6. Another boy sits directly across from me. -1 and a golden bar float by his name. While Cassius lounges, this other boy sits as straight as a blade. His face is celestial, his eyes alert, his hair coiffed. He's tall as me, but broad in the shoulders. I don't think I've ever seen a more perfect human being. A bloody damn statue. And evidently, he can't be drafted, and his parents picked his house because his mom owns 2 of the planet's moons. I mean, really? Okay. So this conversation, I don't have time to go through every bit of it, but suffice to say, Cassius is trying to pretend he's not bothered by Darrow's high score, and Darrow can't help but take a dig that actually is like in bad manners. So he recovers and is sort of like, a lot of good it did me. We're both in the same spot. I wish I hadn't studied so hard. And he saves it, but it really is like he lets himself get pissed and be contrary when the whole point of this is to be networking and making connections. So he can't help but let his temper overtake him. And I really relate to this. Also, being somebody who's just contrary by nature and not wanting to give people what they seem to be angling for. If people directly ask me for something, I'm all too happy to do the thing or tell them the thing. I don't like the passive aggressiveness, though. So if you are hinting toward a thing, but you're not just fucking saying it, I will purposely not give it to you, even though I perfectly understand you, just because I want you to say it. Get a fucking set of balls. You know what I mean? And so I really understand him here. I love this. There's like a conversation about the sports teams, and he tries like flirting with girls. My dormitory is from a dream. Gold trim lines a window that looks out into the valley. A bed is laden with silks and quilts and satins. I lie in it when a pink masseur comes in and stays for an hour kneading my muscles. Later, 3 lithe pinks file through to tend to my needs. I send them to Cassius' room instead. To calm the temptation, I take a cold shower and immerse myself in a hollow experience of a digger in the mining colony, Corinth. More food comes. Augustus was all talk. This is their version of hardship? And as soon as he says that, I'm like, oh no, it's gonna happen. And sure enough, 19 starts with him vomiting because he was punched in the stomach in his sleep. And he gets the shit beat out of him. And at first, he thinks, they know who I am. Oh my God, it's all up. The jig is up. And then he very quickly begins to realize, oh, this is a fucking test. I get it. It's supposed to be like they're putting us through a gauntlet here, and I just have to get through it. So he curls up, lets them beat him. They put a bag over his head, and eventually they strip him. So he's totally naked. All of his stuff is taken away. I love that the bag they put over his head is like, it reeks of piss. And he's like, oh my God, I bet this is so fucked up for all the others because they've never gone through this. But this just smells like my fucking fry suit. So I'm totally used to it. Like, he just has such an advantage coming from where he does in certain respects. And he is listening to see, because he's like, everybody must be getting grabbed at the same time, but I can't hear them. And that's because they want me to feel alone. Like, that's the point, is to just be scared and isolated. They drag me by my heels. Head bumps on stone, jarring me. It's not till much later that they take the bag off my head in a barren stone room lit by a single light. Another person is already here. And it's Julian. They're both totally naked. And it says, I fake a limp with my right leg. I know what this is. And I'm like, yeah, I do too. There's a mention earlier that I kind of missed that he's like noticing a lot of the people that are with them don't have very high scores and he has a bad feeling. And as soon as he has that feeling, I'm like, oh, they're fucking like bait. Oh, that sucks. Imagine thinking you got in and like being really proud of yourself, but really you're just like one of the underachievers they're using as like chum. That fucking sucks. And Julian tries to throw some attitude at Fitchner about how you lied. You said it was tomorrow. And Fitchner says it's 1 a.m. dipstick. It is tomorrow. I mean, Julian, the whole thing is that you guys are supposed to be tough. And even if he did lie, so like, it's just so funny that he thinks that he has real recourse. I can have you up on charges for assault in a moment's notice. So he tosses a golden ring on the floor. I could make it ambiguous, but you look like rusty-headed lads. Only one comes out alive. He leaves the way he came. And Julian, like, Darrow immediately is like, yeah, that's what I thought. Julian is like, oh, just give me the ring, dude, and go home. I need it. You can just go. And Darrow's like, I can just go. Did you not fucking hear him? No, I can't just go. One of us here has got to die. And Julian's like, get out of here. They don't mean that. And I'm just like, oh, wow. Julian's kind of weirdly in the place Darrow had been mentally, where he fails to comprehend the extent of what these people are capable of. It's coming from a very different place because he's so privileged and has been protected so much. But Darrow had been lied to and simply didn't have information and access to that. So it's sort of bizarre because, like, I want to mock Julian for being so stupid and not getting it, but that's part of the point of how the society works is you're not really supposed to see inside to the workings of things, you know? So I hated this because Julian's nice. I liked him. And eventually, guys, oh my God. I hate this so much. I make the first move toward Julian. Darrow was kind in Lycos. I am not. I hate myself for it. I think I'm crying because my vision is unclear. The rules and manners and morals of society are pulled away. All it takes is a stone room and two people needing the same scarce thing. Yet the shift isn't instantaneous. And eventually, like, he's really hesitant at first. But then, when Julian actually manages to land a punch on his nose, he loses his mind. I break his nose with a straight. God, my hands are strong. He wails and ducks into me, grappling my arm into an odd angle. It pops. I use my forehead. It takes him just at the bridge of his nose. I grab the back of his neck and hit him again with my forehead. He can't break away. I do it again. Something cracks. Blood and spit lather my hair. His teeth cut my scalp. I drop back like I'm dancing, reverse off my left foot, weave forward and hit him with all my weight behind my right fist in his chest. My Helldiver knuckles shatter his reinforced sternum. There's a great wheezing gasp and a cracking noise like snapping twigs. He tips backward onto the ground. I'm dazed from striking him with my forehead, seeing red, seeing double. I stumble toward him. Tears stream down my cheeks. He's twitching. When I grab his golden hair, I find him already limp, like a wet golden feather. Blood pulses from his nose. He is quiet. He no longer moves. No longer smiles. I mutter my wife's name as I fall to cradle his head. His face has become like a blood blossom. And that's the end of the chapter. You guys, that was brutal. I hated it. I knew where it was going. Like, it was inevitably going to, be something like this. But the personal, intimate quality of this fight and it being... There's no... Like, I'm sure there are witnesses, but there's nobody in the room. And the two of them don't even have weapons. They're stark naked. The brutality of the type of fight they have set up here is really, really rough. And it almost feels like they specifically picked somebody that they had seen he had gotten friendly with to test whether he would be able to do it. I don't know if that's actually true or if it's sort of circumstantial or what, but I would not be at all surprised if they were keeping an eye on all of them and marking who they were going to choose to throw in there with him. So, yeah, that was the end of that, but that was really, really rough. I've got to wrap up, you guys, so I'm over time again, but really excited to read the next chapters. Thank you guys so much for listening. I really, really hope you're enjoying the coverage, and thank you, Ashley, for commissioning this one. Until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.